Well, hey guys, day 11, 23 strong November, powerful one-liners from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. You know, I've been thinking about these one-liners, and the more we stack one on top of the other as I'm memorizing them, and I hope you are too, I just have been struck with the thought that these are like protective words from Jesus for us. See, the more we hide these one-lines, these powerful one-lines from Jesus in our hearts, we give him access to be able to speak them to us at any time. And how many of us know there are lots of times when our feet start to wander? You know, there's that old hymn that says, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. And we all are tempted at times. We all, sometimes even without knowing it, it's just our bent, it's just our nature to wander off into ways that are less than best, less than what God has for us. So these one lines from Jesus are like wonder protectors, like helping us not to wander away as he can whisper them in our heart, drawing them to remembrance as we have this truth stored up within us of what they mean. So our one-liner today comes right after Jesus prays the Lord's Prayer. And it's interesting that in that prayer, he leads us and guides us to pray for forgiveness. He says, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. But out of all the things he prayed in the Lord's Prayer, he then speaks about one of those lines in the Lord's Prayer. And what he says, or I should say the beginning of what he says, is our one-liner for today. It's found in verse 14. Jesus says, for if you forgive men. Sounds like a condition there. Like, if you do this, then I'll do this. And that's exactly what he says. He says, for if you forgive men, then your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men, then your Father in heaven will not forgive your transgressions. I think just knowing alone that of all the things Jesus said in the Lord's Prayer, he chooses this one to comment on should give us great pause, and it should stop us from wandering into places of unforgiveness. And how many of us know we can so easily wander there? There are moments of offense all the time throughout our lives. Some of them small little things, maybe people we don't even know. Some of them much bigger, much more impact because they are people we know. Or even the offense itself is really big and really impacting. There's so many opportunities, but Jesus calls us to live in a place of forgiveness. How do we do that? How do we live in the glory of his forgiveness? Because really, when you meditate on the reality that the God of heaven, the holy God of heaven has forgiven you, there is a glory like none other in that. That's why Jesus even called attention to the woman who had been forgiven of great sin, and then she poured out her treasure on Jesus. And he said, he who is forgiven much loves much. Why? Because there's a glory in forgiveness that will totally take charge of your soul. So Jesus says, for if you forgive men, he's setting us up to live in the glory of forgiveness. And I want to be totally transparent with you here. I think there is some mystery in these words from Jesus in verses 13 and 14. There's mystery in these thoughts because they lend themselves to thinking of condition, like Jesus is giving us a condition. If you do this, then I'll do that. And the reality is he is. But that doesn't seem to line up with that unconditional love of God that we read about and how he poured out the forgiveness of sins upon us. The reality is he is pouring out, and he's let us know that he's pouring out. But there must be something about the economy of forgiveness in the kingdom of heaven that calls us to get in the flow, or we're not going to really be able to experience it. I don't totally understand that. And I imagine many of you don't either. There's something there. Jesus calls reference to it many times. I think back even to the Beatitudes where he says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." There's that call to get in the flow of mercy, like you've got to give it to receive it. And then here about forgiveness, even in the Lord's Prayer, the way he prayed it. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And then he follows up on that again in verse 13 and verse 14 of Matthew chapter 6 when he says, "For if you forgive men." So there's something there. There's this flow that we are called to get in. And there's some mystery around that. There definitely is some mystery. But yet I'm so grateful that Jesus lets us in on what the economy of heaven is like in regard to forgiveness. Otherwise, we would miss it. Otherwise, we would wander away. So we press into the mystery and we say, "Teach us, Lord. Teach us, Lord." And all the while, we should be choosing to live in forgiveness while he teaches us. While he teaches us, so we don't miss any of his forgiveness toward us. So even if there is some mystery and it doesn't fully reconcile in our minds yet of how God freely forgives us, and yet then it sounds like there's condition here, I think it would be wise for us to lean into what Jesus says here. Lean into the mystery. Let the Lord know you want to be taught, and then heed what he's saying. Choose to live in forgiveness. Let this one-liner from Jesus, "For if you forgive men," instruct your feet where to go and protect you from getting off into places of unforgiveness in your heart. How do we keep an open heart? We live in forgiveness and we receive forgiveness. And Jesus knows there is something so precious about forgiveness. He doesn't want us to miss out on it. So let these words from Jesus, "For if you forgive men," call you back onto that pathway of forgiveness today and all the days of your life if we ever choose to wonder. I'll see you soon.